They thought she was an easy target, just a wheelchair-bound prosecutor with a past. But they were wrong. When a ruthless gang of outlaws set their sights on her, they had no idea they were about to face a force they couldn't defeat. Meet Sarah, a sharp, no-nonsense prosecutor who doesn't let her disability define her. With a mind as fierce as her will to fight, Sarah has taken down dangerous criminals before, but these outlaws are unlike any she's dealt with. As threats loom closer, Sarah must decide if she's ready to fight back, not just for justice, but for her life. Will she let her condition hold her back, or will she show the world that strength comes in many forms? In the next part of the story, the tension builds. Who will make the first move? And who will be left standing when the dust settles? Sarah's reputation as a prosecutor wasn't built on her ability to walk into a courtroom. It was forged through her relentless pursuit of justice, no matter the odds. After a tragic accident left her in a wheelchair, many thought she'd quit. But instead, she doubled down, proving time and again that her mind was sharper than any weapon. Yet, the outlaws that had begun circling her had no respect for her past victories. They weren't interested in her accomplishments, they only saw vulnerability. The gang's leader, a cold-blooded criminal named Kane, had been quietly watching her for weeks, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. But something about Sarah kept him intrigued. She wasn't like the other easy targets he'd taken down. The stakes were higher than either side expected, and every move Sarah made was under the watchful eyes of those who wanted her silenced. But she wasn't going down without a fight. As Sarah went through her daily routine, the unease lingered just beneath the surface. The streets of the city felt quieter than usual, as though everyone was holding their breath. She couldn't shake the feeling that someone was always watching her, no longer just the usual suspects, but someone much more dangerous. Kane and his crew were closing in, but Sarah knew better than to act rashly. Her instincts told her that the gang wasn't just after her, they were after something much bigger. Maybe it was the high-profile case she had been working on, one that threatened to expose a massive corruption ring involving some of the city's most powerful figures. If she could connect the dots, it would bring down people who had been untouchable for years. But now, those same people were turning against her, using Kane and his crew as pawns to eliminate the threat before it could come to light. Meanwhile, Detective Mark Daniels, her longtime ally, was growing suspicious of Sarah's increasing isolation. He knew something was off, but Sarah had always kept her cards close to her chest. He couldn't help but wonder if her tenacity was starting to cloud her judgment. Was she pushing too hard, or was the conspiracy even bigger than he realized? The more he uncovered, the more tangled the web became. He had no idea just how deep the danger ran, but with every step closer to the truth, the stakes grew higher. And now, with Sarah in the crosshairs, he wasn't sure if he could save her, or if she even wanted to be saved. The pressure was mounting. Sarah could feel it in every corner of her life, at work, in her home, even in the quiet moments when she tried to escape the chaos. The outlaws were getting bolder, sending cryptic messages and subtle threats, all designed to break her spirit. But Sarah wasn't a quitter. She wasn't going to back down now, not when she was so close to exposing everything. But the closer she got, the more dangerous it became. It wasn't just her life on the line anymore, it was everyone she cared about. Detective Daniels had gotten wind of her investigation, and while he was doing his best to protect her, she couldn't shake the nagging feeling that he was being watched too. Her every move was being tracked. Late one evening, as Sarah wheeled herself back to her apartment, a chill ran down her spine. The street lights flickered above her, casting long shadows on the sidewalk. She heard a noise behind her, soft but unmistakable. The hairs on the back of her neck stood up. She quickened her pace, only to be met by the unmistakable sound of footsteps gaining ground. Her heart pounded. Turning a corner, she spotted a figure in the distance. Kane, he wasn't alone. His men stood just behind him, blocking the path. The grin on his face sent a wave of dread over her. He was here, and this wasn't just a warning anymore. It was the final move in a deadly game. "You've come too far, Sarah," Kane said, his voice low but carrying an edge of satisfaction. You should have left things alone. Sarah's fingers tightened around the handles of her wheelchair, but she refused to show fear. She had no intention of backing down. Not now, not ever. Sarah's pulse raced, but she kept her eyes locked on Kane, refusing to give him the satisfaction of seeing her afraid. You don't know who you're dealing with, she said, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her. Kane's smirk deepened, and for a moment he didn't move, just watching her, savoring the moment like a cat playing with its prey. Then, just as the tension seemed unbearable, something unexpected happened. A distant car engine roared to life, its headlights cutting through the darkness. Sarah's heart skipped. It wasn't just any car, it was Mark's. The detective had been tailing her, just as she'd suspected, but instead of relief, a cold wave of realization hit her. Mark didn't seem to be stopping. In fact, he was speeding right toward them. Kane's men tensed, but it was too late. The car slammed into the streetlight beside them, its brakes screeching as it came to a halt just a few feet from Sarah. Mark, his face pale and frantic, burst from the car. "Sarah, get out of here," he shouted. She barely had time to react when everything changed in an instant. From behind Mark, another figure emerged from the shadows. Someone Sarah had never expected to see, someone who should have been on her side all along, her own assistant, Maya. But Maya wasn't just standing there. She was holding a gun, pointed straight at Mark. The realization hit like a punch to the gut. Maya had been playing both sides all along. She wasn't just an innocent bystander, she was one of the people working with Kane. And now, it seemed like the final lines of loyalty had been erased. "Don't move, Sarah," Maya said, her voice cold, unrecognizable. "This is over." Everything Sarah had worked for, every piece of evidence, every moment of trust she'd built over the years, came crashing down. The stakes had just been raised to a level she couldn't ignore. It wasn't just about her life anymore, it was about losing everything. The gun in Maya's hand shook slightly, but her eyes were steely, betraying no emotion. Sarah's mind raced, piecing together everything in an instant. Maya had been too helpful, too eager to please. She had been feeding information to Kane all along. The realization hit harder than anything she'd ever faced. Betrayal cut deeper than any bullet could. "You sold me out," Sarah whispered, her voice raw, but defiant. "Why, Maya? You knew what was at stake." Maya's lips curled into a bitter smile. "Because it was never about justice for me, Sarah. It was about power. You've always been in the way." She glanced at Kane, who remained silent, enjoying the spectacle. But before Sarah could process the full weight of what Maya had said, she heard a faint click from behind. Mark, still on the ground, had managed to slide his hand into his jacket, pulling out his gun. It wasn't just any gun. It was the one that had been planted in her office days before, the one they'd tried to frame her with. "Not so fast," Mark said, his voice low and commanding. "You're not getting away with this." Maya froze, her eyes flickering to Kane. He looked surprised, but quickly regained his composure, motioning for her to stay calm. But the tension was thick in the air. This wasn't a moment anyone could control. Before anyone could react, a loud siren blared in the distance. Another car screeched to a stop, this time with uniformed officers piling out, weapons drawn. It was the cavalry. Detective Daniels had been working a backup operation all along. He'd suspected Maya's double-cross for weeks, waiting for the perfect moment to intervene. In a split second, the situation exploded into chaos. Maya was tackled by two officers, the gun slipping from her grip. Kane made a desperate attempt to escape, but Mark's bullet found its mark, striking him in the leg. As he crumpled to the ground, Sarah wheeled herself closer, her heart pounding but her mind sharp. The game was over for Kane and his crew. But just as she thought the nightmare was ending, Maya's voice rang out from the ground, weak but sharp. "You have no idea what's coming next. The real game is just starting." Before anyone could process her words, Maya was pulled away, her chilling warning hanging in the air like a storm cloud. Sarah's heart skipped. This wasn't over. Not yet. In the weeks that followed, Sarah's life began to find a new sense of normalcy. Kane's crew was dismantled, and Maya was taken into custody, her betrayal unraveling like the threads of a broken tapestry. Sarah felt a bitter relief. Justice had been served, but at a personal cost. The weight of the conspiracy, the lies, and the betrayal had left their mark on her. Still, she pressed forward. The case against the corrupt officials tied to Kane's operation was only just beginning. The truth was out, but Sarah knew it would.